evening, everyone. Yep, we're on. Well, it has been a good day. We've been talking to a lot of folks about how warm it has been. Lindsay mentioned that this morning about how warm it's been. And it just doesn't seem like fall time, but I'm sure it'll be right around the corner. And if you're anything like me, you love this time of year and you kind of look forward to those cooler days and sort of the festivities that come along with fall as well. But any season is a good season to be a Christian. And I'm thankful to have this season in my life and to be able to share that season with you. Several years ago, I was helping with a preacher's camp in Columbia, Tennessee. And there were some older gentlemen from the congregation who had come in the morning to the lodge where we were staying the night. And they would fix breakfast. And they were working on the pancakes and the bacon and the chocolate gravy and the biscuits. And you're getting a little hungry right now, aren't you? And they were talking. One of the men, he had several units that he rented. And there was a family who had vacated one of those units, so he had to go in and do some cleanup and touch up before he rented that out to somebody else. And evidently, the family had come and they had taken all the furniture out. They had moved completely out, had done a fine job cleaning up everything. Nothing in the cupboards, nothing in the closets, nothing in the rooms. And really all he had to do was clean up. But then he noticed in the corner of a bedroom was an old guitar. And that struck him as sort of humorous. You know, why would they take everything out of here, make sure they cleaned up everything, and then left this guitar in the corner? Well, being someone who enjoyed playing the guitar, he went over and he picked up the guitar and he strummed it for a little bit, and it just didn't sound right. So he did what guitar players do, and I have no idea the right terminology here because I'm not a guitar player. And so he tried adjusting and tried tuning it. He tried strumming on that guitar a little bit more, and it just didn't sound right. And so he tried tuning a little bit more, and would you know it, as he strummed, it just wouldn't tune right. And he made the comment, "I know why they left it behind." Let me throw out a few scenarios to you. A boy is late to get to a bus to go to a camp. He misses the bus. On Friday night, he told his parents that he was going to go out and spend some time with his buddies, and his parents said, "Well, don't be out too late because you have to get up and get ready and go to camp tomorrow morning." Well, he wasn't disobedient, but he stayed out later than as normal and came home, and he was so tired as he went to bed, he forgot to set the alarm on his phone. His parents were gone by the morning, and he was expected to get up and gather all of his things and get to the church parking lot to go to camp with his friends. But he never set his alarm. He never got up. He never got his things together. He never made it to the church building. I know why that young man was left behind. A businesswoman is about to take a flight to attend a business conference. Her flight is going to take her out of Little Rock. She has to leave early in the morning, and she knows what time her flight is leaving. And she figures out how long it will take her to get to Little Rock and get into the airport and how long she needs to be there before her flight actually takes off. And as she's traveling down the road, she encounters a traffic accident. Cars are backed up for miles and miles away. She had not planned on the idea that there might be traffic problems. I know why she was left behind. A man has been married for 10 years. He's had a substance abuse problem even before he was married. Even after telling his wife that he would completely give it up, he did not. And that substance abuse led him into fits of anger, at times to beat her, at other times to abuse the children. After 10 years of a rocky and broken relationship, I know why he was left behind. From the beginning of Scripture all the way to Revelation, God continually gives warnings for us to be ready. There is a judgment that is coming. There have been many times throughout Bible's history that God has brought judgment. And He sent messengers beforehand, be ready. Judgment is coming. The day of the Lord is coming. And to all of us, God continually tells us there is a judgment day that is coming. We sing about it from time to time. They're not the most glorious songs. They're not the upbeat songs. There's a sad day coming, the sad day coming. We don't really like to talk about judgment, but we need to talk about judgment. We need to talk about the fact that there is a loving and holy God who wants to send His Son again. And in that desire to send His Son again, to reign with His people, He knows that judgment must take place. And so He gives us warning. We don't want to be caught unaware like the people in the days of Noah who were eating and drinking and they were getting married and giving in marriage and completely unaware that God was about to flood the world. We don't want to be like Sodom and Gomorrah, who were an ungodly people, and God eventually destroyed. We don't want to be like the children of Israel who were wandering around in the wilderness and given an opportunity to go into the land of promise, but they shirked away in unbelief. We don't want to be like those foolish maidens in the parable of Jesus in Matthew chapter 25, who showed up at the wedding feast, waiting for the bridegroom to come, not prepared for his arrival. We don't want to be like those who were on the left in the scene in Matthew chapter 25 as Jesus, as the angels had separated the goats from the sheep, the people to the left and to the right. When Jesus looks to those who are on the left and says, "You're cursed." We don't want to be found as individuals who were not diligent and not loving and not serving in a people who are of a righteous character. God has warned us over and over and over again that none of us would be left behind. Here's a question for you. This is a question I'd like to ask that you participate if you have the mind to do this. If you have a pen, maybe a scrap piece of paper, maybe you can find a little card to actually write this question up there. For what reason would? And then fill in the blank. Now, and you may think about this for yourself. You know, for what reason would Jason Hart be left behind? Or maybe you might think of a neighbor, or maybe you might think of a friend, maybe you might think of a relative, someone whom you care about and whose eternal destiny you care about. Go ahead, write that name down. Even if you do it in your mind, just kind of write it with, that highlighter and make it show up like it's a neon sign. For what reason would this person be left behind? Let's go back and let's take a look at a few examples of people who were left behind. Going back to Genesis chapter 6 through chapter 8. God looks down upon the world and this is what He sees. He sees a great wickedness. He sees hearts are evil continually. They are corrupt in God's sight. But yet there is a man by the name of Noah. And God recognizes him as a man of righteousness. For 100 years, Noah builds an ark. God says, build an ark. I will spare you and your household. I will preserve my creation. But because of its condition now, I will destroy it. For 100 years, Noah built the ark. And Peter gives us the impression that as he was doing this, that Noah was preaching along the way, because he was a herald of righteousness. Christ preaching to the spirits then through Noah, warning them that a day of judgment was coming. But as Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 38, they just kept on eating and drinking and being married and getting married and giving away in marriage, going through life just as normal, unaware or even apathetic that there was a judgment day that was coming. You know, why would they even think that, though? Why would they even consider it? Nothing like this had ever happened before. You know, there's some indication that they would have never seen great flooding like this even up to this point. So why would they even expect something like what Noah would have been preaching to them about? Go ahead, Noah. You're crazy. Just go on and start, keep building your boat. We'll see what happens. And sometimes I wonder if we go about our daily lives week by week by week, month by month by month, never even really thinking about the day that Jesus will come again. Well, simply because, it hasn't happened before. It hasn't happened in thousands and thousands of years. Why should I expect it to happen tomorrow? I know why those people were left behind. Fast forwarding to Genesis chapters 18 to 19. In Genesis chapter 13 and verse 3, let me go back. Genesis chapter 13 and verse 13, I have a little misprint here. We learn that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah were a wicked people. In Genesis chapter 18, God looks down, He hears this outcry, and He's telling Abraham, I'm going to go look at Sodom and Gomorrah and see if the outcry that I have heard is actually true. And God says, now I'm going to do something about it. I will destroy these people. And Abraham does a very Jesus-like thing, a very Moses-like thing. He steps in to intercede for the people. Abraham very likely desiring to intercede on behalf of his nephew Lot as much as anything. He says, wait a second. Would you spare these people if you could find 50 righteous people? So God says, yeah, if I find 50 righteous people, but He can't find 50. What about 45? Or what about 40? Or what about 20? Or what about 10? He couldn't even find 10 righteous people in all of the city of Sodom. Isaiah chapter 3 and verse 9 is comparing Jerusalem to the sin of Sodom. That they are prideful of their sins. Sometimes we really hit hard on secret sin. Those thoughts that you have in your minds and in your hearts, and you keep it to yourself, and you just don't let anybody know, but you know it's there. You don't ever deal with it. And we recognize just how horrible that is, and how hard it is of a struggle for us to deal with that. Can you think of a people who don't keep it secret and who voice it as if they are proud of it? Because I've got this sin in my life and I'm proud of it. There's no shame, no blushing Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 49, it describes the wickedness of Sodom and Gomorrah as a people who were very, very prosperous. They had anything that they ever needed. And they wouldn't do a thing to help the poor and the needy. Jude, the brother of Jesus, describes their condition as being immoral and a natural desire. This is kind of like the poster child. Even Jesus refers to Sodom and Gomorrah, the poster child of wickedness. You know why they were left behind. Fast forwarding into Exodus, to the Exodus of Israel. Children of Israel. These were individuals that God had looked down upon whenever they were enslaved in Egypt. And He heard their cries, He saw their affliction, and He came down to deliver them. Raised up a servant by the name of Moses, and Moses came in and set them free. They crossed the Red Sea. God parted the waters. They came into the wilderness. And just within just a few months' time, they're already griping and complaining and grumbling. But why did you bring us out into the wilderness to die? Would it have been better if we had graves in Egypt? There were times they were ready to find somebody else to lead them. And in this case, they were ready to pick out a leader to lead them back over into Egypt. 10 times they griped and grumbled and complained and tested God. So eventually they were about to come to the promised land. God had been so patient with them. And even at a time when God was ready to say, I'm going to strike them away, and Moses, I'm going to make a people out of you. And Moses interceded for them. He said, don't do this. These are your people. They sent out 10 spies. They sent out 12 spies, excuse me. They went into the land. For 40 days they viewed the land, and they found that it was the land exactly as God had promised. They came back and they had loads of grapes they were carrying along the way, and they had figs, and they shared that with Moses, and they said, Moses, this is exactly the type of land that you told us about, but they've got walled cities and fortified cities and strong people. And Caleb, he was ready to say, okay, let's go, we can do this, because God's on our side. But the 10 spies, who did not believe that they could take the land, began to spread lies among the Israelites. This is a land that swallows up the people. And we look like grasshoppers in this land because there were giants in the land. And there's absolutely no way that we could possibly enter into this land. And Israel began crying, oh, it would have been better for us to be in Egypt than it would be to die out here in the wilderness, for our graves to be here. Oh, poor, pitiful us. Just give us a leader and take us back over to Egypt. Caleb stands up and he begins to cry to the people. We can take this land. God will be on our sides. God has given us this promise. They were about ready to stone Caleb and Joshua and Moses and Aaron. They could not enter in because of unbelief. We know why they were left behind. Jesus told a parable about 10 maidens. 5 were foolish, 5 were wise. 5 wise maidens showed up at the marriage feast, and they brought with them not only their lamps and their wicks and oil, but also had extra oil to last them through the night. You know, just in case the bridegroom was late on his arrival. 5 of those maidens were foolish. They showed up with their wicks and their lamps, And their lamps were lit with the oil that was in the lamp, but they didn't bring any extra oil. When the bridegroom was delayed in coming, the sound came out, the bridegroom is coming, the bridegroom is coming. And everybody was excited except for the 5 foolish maidens. Their oil was running out. So they looked over at the 5 wise maidens and said, would you please give us some of your oil? Because we've all run out. And the 5 wise ones told them, no, we may not have enough for ourselves and for you, so you have to go into the marketplace and go and get your own. And so they go into the marketplace, and while they're gone, the bridegroom shows up. And everybody comes inside, and they shut the door. The party has begun. The feast has begun. Those 5 foolish maidens come in, and they begin knocking on the door. Let us in. We've got our oil now. We're ready. The voice from the inside came back. I do not know you. We know why they were left behind. One last example. Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46. Jesus has described the judgment scene. The angels have come with the Son of Man in power. And He has sat down on His throne, and the angels have begun to separate the sheep from the goats. Those to His left and those to His right. To those on the right, He said, come, blessed of the Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you since the foundation of the world. You're blessed. They have been wondering, well, what did we do? Well, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. When I was sick or in prison, you visited me. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. But when did we do that? Inasmuch as you've done it unto one of the least of these, my brothers, you've also done it unto me. Come, you blessed of the Father. To those on His left, He said, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me to drink. When I was a stranger, you didn't welcome me. When I was naked, you didn't clothe me. When I was sick or in prison, you didn't minister unto me. You didn't visit me. Well, when did we not feed you or give you to drink or did not minister unto you? Inasmuch as you did not do it unto one of the least of these, my brothers, you did not do it unto me. We know why they would be left behind. Here is a very, very serious question, isn't it? Will you be left behind? Let me tell you assuredly, God is not trying to lose you. God is not trying to banish you. God is not trying to condemn you. God wants you. His love for you is an imposing love. So much so that He sent His Son. He gifted His Son on our behalf. Not only to live a life that Israel would not live. To live a life that we should live. And then to die so that we could live that life. To go into the grave and to be raised again to become king so that we could live that resurrected life. Yes, the good news for you and I is that we don't have to be left behind. I absolutely love Clint's message this morning. I'm thankful of the victory that we have in Christ. That there is coming a day when death will be given its final blow. There will be no more sickness. There will be no more death. There will be no more pain. And that's the life that I get to live because of Him. And the thing is, I want you to be able to live that life too. But you cannot have that life. You cannot have that experience. You cannot have that eternity if you have been left behind. Let's back up just a little bit. A couple of boys go out on Friday night. They're anticipating going to camp on the next day. One of the boys decides that he's going to go home early. Now I've got to go get my stuff together for camp and be ready. And he goes home and he does that. And as he's getting ready, he thinks about his friend who decided to stay out a little later than he had planned on. And as he was getting all of his things ready, he thought, well, maybe I should send my buddy a text to remind him to set his alarm clock. The next morning he gets up, and as he's gathering his stuff and taking it to the car to get ready to go to the church building, he begins to think, well, I wonder if he has gotten up. He said, I'll wait and see if he's there at the church parking lot. He gets to the church and he begins to load up his things into the trailer and getting ready to go to the church camp. He begins to think about his buddy. My buddy hasn't showed up yet. Maybe somebody needs to check on him. But you know what? I've got some things to do. I've got to get my baggage and get it into the trailer, and I need to make sure I get my seat on the van. And he never contacts his friend. I know why he was left behind. A man travels to Little Rock to take an early morning flight to a business conference. One of his partners, a lady, is going to take a later flight that day. As he is traveling to Little Rock, there is a major wreck on the interstate. He can tell that this wreck is major enough that many hours will be consumed with cleaning up the scene. He begins to think, I'm able to get off this exit and make my way around, but my associate back home may not know about this. He gets off and he goes on to the airport and he thinks for a little bit, you know what? It would really help her if I let her know that there has been an accident. She may want to try and use a different route. I'll tell you what I'll do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take out my cell phone and I'm going to I'm going to post something on Facebook. Major wreck on the north side of Little Rock. Use caution or choose another route. She's on Facebook. She's one of my friends. She'll certainly be able to see that. Right? But he never gives her a call. I know why she was left behind. A man has a younger brother, one whom he knows has really struggled with substance abuse. And he is married and has started a family. He's noticed a few things about how distant his brother has become. He has also noticed that when family is together, that his wife tends to wear longer sleeves. And even with heavy makeup, you can tell that there is some bruising under. He thinks, maybe I should call a counselor. Maybe I should have an intervention, get some people together and try to talk about this. Anything to save him, to save this family. It was really none of my business. For 10 years, he stayed silent, never mentioning anything to him. We know why he was left behind. Folks, the judgment of God is sure. And I want you to understand something. every person will be accountable for their decisions. Not because of what we say or how we say it or what we say to them. But I want you to seriously think about this question. For what reason would any person that you might think of be left behind? For what reason would somebody who is lost or someone who is erring be left behind? In Ezekiel chapter 33, verses 7 through 9, this is what God had to say to Ezekiel. And I want you to understand that this is something that God says to Ezekiel. I do not find anything as specific and pointed to all of us in a general sense. So this is something that is specifically told to Ezekiel. But I want you to recognize is how important this is to God. As for you, son of man, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. When you hear a word from my mouth, give them a warning from me. If I say to the wicked one, you will surely die, but you do not speak out to warn him about this way, that wicked person will die for his iniquity. Yet I will hold you responsible for his blood. But if you warn a wicked person to turn from his way, and he doesn't turn from it, he will die for his iniquity, but you will have rescued yourself. For what reason might the lost, might the erring be left behind? I did not warn them. I did not mention Jesus to them. I did not give the transformed example to show them what resurrected living is supposed to look like. I did not offer compassion in a time of need. Maybe my heart hurt for them, but my feet never took me in front of their face. Or I did not account for the seriousness of silence. We sang the song earlier. It really is a heart-wrenching song. It's one of those songs I really don't enjoy to sing. You never mention him to me. Yeah, I don't know all the words that will be said on the day of judgment. I don't know all of the pleas or all of the crying or all of the gasps. I don't know what that's going to sound like, and I certainly don't know if anybody on the day of judgment will look at somebody else and say, "You never mentioned him to me." And if those words are uttered, I pray that God will be able to shield those cries from me, from all of us. I can't imagine. I can't imagine a life living with Jesus, walking hand in hand with my Savior and my Lord. Trying to have a picture of walking with Him on the street of gold. To sit down at the Messianic banquet with Him and to feast with Him. And while I am feasting with Him, Him sharing a cup of blessing with me, Him sharing some meat with me, and me enjoying this with people of all nations and tribes who have placed their faith in Jesus while feasting, thinking that there may be some cries saying, "But you never mentioned Him to me." I don't believe that eternity will be filled with that sense of guilt or sorrow, because all the sorrows and all the tears will be wiped away by God. But it is sobering to think that while those who have faith in Jesus and will live with Him forever, there are those eternally separated from God who could have uttered those words, "You never mentioned Him to me." Think about the question. Will you be left behind? I know none of you want to be left behind. I don't want to leave this building tonight without an opportunity for you to make your life right with God, or for God to make your life right with Him. And that's why we're going to sing this song of invitation. And as we stand, this is your opportunity to come pleading before God. Like the story that Jesus told about the Pharisee and the tax collector. And the tax collector just do nothing but beat his chest and just say, "Have mercy on me, God." This is the time for you to say, "I don't want to be left behind. I want to be by your side, God. I want to be with you, Jesus. I want to find a relationship with you, and I want my purpose in your kingdom, because I want to be an instrument of righteousness in your hands rather than being left behind." If there's anything that we can do, please come and stand.